before we kind of get into tour stuff and all that kind of good stuff, something I did want to catch up on. I was out in Vegas last year, as you were, of course, for when we were young. I mean, one of my favorite festivals on the calendar. I got to say, I think they do it so well, so much
Yeah,
fun. Full albums this year, of course, as well. Your set was like, I mean, it went down such a storm. I love those two side stages as well. You get a really, really nice atmosphere, I find, every single time with the crowds coming through that bit. How did you find that experience? How was preparing for that show?
it was awesome. I mean, we play a lot of those songs. So it wasn't as hard when we first agreed to do it, which was like probably about a year before the actual festival. I was like, okay, well, that's gonna be a lot of work to like learn a whole record. But once we actually got into do it, I was like, we really only got to learn like four songs. Like there's only like four songs that we don't really know how to play. Um, so it was, I mean, preparing for it was pretty easy. We had done When We Were Young before we did the first year, so we kind of knew what to expect. We played the same stage, everything, so it was all pretty much the same. When We Were Young is just like a whirlwind because Vegas at all is a whirlwind, just being anywhere, even when you just play a regular show in a club show in Vegas, or being in Vegas for any amount of time is daunting, but then you add, every person you've ever met is there also, a couple of hundred, band members that you're friends with. And and then all of our wives were out at that one too. So it's a wor I mean, it goes by so fast. It's a blur, but it's awesome. I mean, it's great. We definitely came up playing a lot of festivals in the US, and then we'd go over to the UK or Europe and play a festival. And you're like, why can't the US figure this out? Like why are US festivals so uncomfortable and stressful? And then you go overseas and everything is so smooth. But they're figuring it out here now. Like definitely with When We Were Young, Riot Fest too, they're like much more comfortable than like what festivals used to be here.
Yeah, it's nice that like particularly in the US, I find that specialism's coming a little bit as well. Like Riot Fest is another great example. It's like, oh, it's good to see there's major festivals in play that really do cater to our scene in a big way. That's
Yeah.
always got to be nice to see those on the calendar.
It's awesome. I mean, especially when we were young. I mean, the first year, especially when it got announced and how huge it was and how much press it got, and um, it sold out so fast, and they had to add days and all this stuff. It was really like validating because it's ours. It's like we're never going to play Coachella, and there's like certain festivals that we're just never going to get booked on. I mean, we'll probably never play Glastonbury. Like they don't book bands like us, and we've always sort of been like the emo scene, the punk scene, whatever you call it. Like it's always been sort of like we've been othered in a little bit of a way, because we don't play those big mainstream things, And when this happened, I remember talking to Mikey Way from My Chem about it, and we were just kind of like, yeah, this is ours, like we don't like it's almost like we're showing everyone, we're showing the world like how important this music is. It's not other, it's a different path, but it's just as important of a path to a lot of
Yeah.
people.
No, I fully agree. Yeah, watching Jimmy at World play for 60,000 people felt pretty fucking special, man. It was just validating's the word, man, for our scene in general. I thought it was really, really nice. And great to see you guys out there. And obviously now, completely different type of set, but another kind of bigger challenge here. So 25th anniversary tour, double set duty, which is always really interesting. Tell me about the decision to kind of do that split and kind of, I guess, fit in the different eras in that way. When did that kind of idea come together for you?
Yeah, we had this idea of, we always try to change our tours up a little bit. We kind of want we basically do one tour a year. We do like one big tour a year. Um, every time we go out, we want it to be a different look, like for the audience, something different. So we'll go out and we'll play the biggest venues that we possibly can, and we'll build a big package, and it'll be opening bands, support bands that the fans will know also, and like that's sort of what we're doing for the year. And then the following year, we'll do smaller places, and we'll say, okay, this is your chance to see us in like a smaller venue, somewhere that we wouldn't normally play, and the opening bands are going to be bands that are new to you that you haven't seen before. And then maybe go out and we'll do an acoustic tour one year, you know. So we always want it to be something like change the sight lines a little bit for the fan is the way that we that we like to look at it. So the idea for this year was like, let's break up the in the US we're actually doing 2 full days in every city. So it's a show, it's 2 shows in every city where one night is one night is songs from our first 4 records, and one night is songs from our second 5 records. So in the UK, you know, we're not quite big enough to do 2 full shows everywhere. So we just split it up. We wanted to give that same vibe of like an going through the eras with us, like that sort of trip through the years of Bayside. So we split it up into 2 sets to kind of give that same feeling. So the first set, you know, the first half of the show will be all old songs, and the second half of the show will be all like, you know, I say newer. Some of them are like 10 or 12 years old, but you know, then it's the newer kind of set.
Yeah, it's a nice balance and a nice way to kind of nod to different audiences. Because I guess this is what I find with a lot of bands, kind of your era, is that when you started putting stuff out in the kind of before streaming age or the pre-streaming age, you suddenly get to this point all these years later where it's not just the fans, you know, people like me in my 30s who were there the first time. It's newer kids coming all the time. I find this with so many bands because they're discovering it fresh. You know, it's like these albums are albums they're hearing for the first time and hearing it as if it's something completely new. That's got to be really nice then to have a project like this where you can give these new kids something they want and something they will have missed out on the first time.
It's great for that, but it's also great for the old fans because we're going to get a chance to play songs that we don't normally play, that you don't get to hear. I mean, at this point we have 9 records. We've released, you know, 20 singles probably, you know what I mean? So we've got so many songs. Like our set list, at least 60%, if not more, of our set list is spoken for before we ever put pen to paper to come up with a set list, you know. Like we have to play Devotion and Desire. We have to play Blame It on Bad Luck. We have to play Duality. We have to play Sick Sick Sick. We have, like, there's so many songs that like that people would be too disappointed if we didn't play that. And then you have a new record out, right? Every time we tour, almost there's a new record that we have to promote. So then we are playing a few new songs promoting the new record. So when do you ever get a chance to play track 9 from the second record? You know, like when is there ever room for that? So the cool thing about doing it this way is that breaking it up when we do, you know, half the set in the UK or one day in the US is going to be just from the first 4 records. That's a chance for us to, you know, if half of that show is singles or hits or fan favorites or whatever, that leaves like 10 deep cuts that we can get into, you know. And the same thing for the set for the newer songs where we play, you know, half the show is going to be sort of singles, and that leaves 10 spots for deep cuts or more, you know. So it's great for the old fans too because they'll get to hear songs they've been waiting to hear that we never play.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you mentioned the new record aspect as well, because of course we're at this point now where the album's been out a few months, and I always love this point where you're finally getting some of these newer songs out on the road because it changes them. I say this with everybody, like it's going to
Mhm.
change them. Seeing the audience reaction, seeing what works together with you guys live, the moments that particularly pop off from a record, that's definitely going to change your opinion of them and change where you want them to fit in the set and stuff. How have you been finding that now you're actually getting some of these newer songs off the last record in front of the audience? Has anything surprised you about that?
I mean, the biggest thing is seeing what songs are going to become popular. You know, I mean, you know, I don't know that we're particularly good at picking singles. Sometimes we've had records where the single's not the most popular song, you know, or the single didn't stick around, or the third single was sort of the big song, you know. Um, so it's always interesting or you have songs, I mean, like Blame It on Bad Luck that I mentioned before, like that's one of Bayside's most popular songs. Montauk is one of Bayside's most popular songs. Neither of those were singles. We never shot videos for either of those songs. So, um, you know, that's the most interesting thing is seeing what the fans are going to respond to and knowing what you're going to be expected to play. Um, what songs are we going to become staples in the set? You know, "Go to Hell" from the new record has become like a really popular song, like a new staple for the band. That's not a single. We never shot a video for that. Like, you know, the fans just kind of gravitated towards it. It's my favorite song on the record, so I'm happy. I'm happy if we play that song every day for the next 25 years. I'd be happy.
That's always nice. That's always nice when it's your favorite that gets a little bit of a nod from the crowd. That's got to make it a little bit easier every night. That's very, very cool to see those reactions. Um,
Yeah.
and I guess as well, I do like to always ask this question when we're looking back on a moment like this, and obviously this is an anniversary tour. So, at the risk of cliche, but I'm genuinely fascinated by this. Going back to the very, very beginning, your very kind of beginnings in Bayside. Is there anything about your kind of recording process and your writing process that does actually still apply today? You know, I know so much will have changed. You will have learned so much over these
Mhm.
albums, but is there anything from those beginning days you learned quite early on that's actually stuck with you through till now?
We, I mean, you know, this might be cliche also, but we have to love it. You know,
Mm,
we've got to, everybody in the room has to love everything that's happening. But also it's very important to us to make sure that it's going to translate to the audience too. We don't want to put out music that we like and nobody else is going to, and we also don't want to put out music that is meant for the audience to like that we don't like also, you know. So that, I mean, I would say that that's been the through line from the beginning, is that does everybody love this, and like do we think like that the audience is going to love it too, you know. And that's something. And also a question that we've asked about our music, our merch, our album covers, everything that we do, we have we set out from the beginning to eventually be where we are now. We never were focused on like a quick growth or having a hit or crossing over into pop or anything like that. We when we start, the very beginning of the band was, we were looking at Bad Religion, we were looking at Social Distortion, we were looking at Dropkick Murphys. We wanted to be a band for a long time. We
mm.
wanted to make a living for a long time. We wanted to do this forever. And a question that we ask ourselves all the time from the beginning to now is, are we ever going to be embarrassed about this? And whether it's a lyric, whether it's a song, whether it's an album cover, whether it's a photo shoot, a t-shirt design, are we ever going to be embarrassed about this? Is it timeless? Is it going to be dated? Um, and that's always been really important to us. So like we are now like bearing the fruits of that
Mm.
strategy that we set out on, like, you know, over 2 decades ago. Was like, can will we still be doing this in, will we still be relevant in 25 years?
Yeah, that's a really, really nice attitude to have. And like you say, that's what leads to lasting careers and being able to do this still 25 years on. No, that's definitely an
Yeah, I
impressive way
mean,
to look
we've
at it.
seen, so we have been through so many trends
Mm.
over the years that we've been a band, you know, in this, you know, in this scene. I mean, you know, a lot of people were, there was this sort of half sing half scream stuff, and then there was sort of the neon stuff, and none of us ever had swoop haircuts. And we, um you know, there was like, when like over auto tuning stuff and synthesizers and all these sort of different things that we saw happening around us. We've seen them all sort of come up, and some of them stick around, some of them don't. You know, some bands get dated, you know, some bands don't. You know, we just, we're we're I'd say that we're lucky that we don't see ourselves as, and I don't think our audience sees us as, a nostalgia band, you know, because they still do like our new music. We still think that we're relevant. Another example that we always use is, we wanted to be Metallica. We didn't want to be Poison. You know, like
Right,
we
right.
wanted to be The Cure. We didn't want to be, you know, Men Without Hats. You know, like, name the scene, name the genre, name the era, and like, we were looking at the bands that outlived the moment, you know, and we wanted to, we always wanted to outlive the moment.
Yeah, definitely a good ambition to have for any new band coming up. I think that outliving the moment is a very, very key phrase to keep in your heads for sure. That definitely makes a lot of sense. I want to mention as well, like, I mean, something that was key for not just yourselves, but so many bands coming up was, of course, Warped Tour, and we are now into 2025. We know it's back this year, which is really, really
Hmm.
exciting. And I just
Yeah.
always like to, whenever I speak to someone like yourself who had some very formative years on that tour, just kind of get your reaction to that return and what your memories are, and I guess what you learn, because it feels like I think the recurring theme in any conversation I've had about it with bands is that it's almost like live boot camp. Like there's no way you
Yes.
can do that tour and come out a worse live band. You will learn something from the different times of day, different stages, all that stuff that kind of brings it together. But what are your memories? What are your experiences?
Yeah, it prepares you for anything. Yeah, like it makes you a better band. I mean, there's the 10,000 hours and the Beatles in Hamburg, right? Like the Warped Tour is the Beatles in Hamburg for punk bands. Like you just play every day, like there's so few days off. You're driving long distances every day. You're out in the heat, there's no dressing rooms. You're like, it is a gauntlet. And you get to a point, and it's not about paying dues. It's not about eating shit just for the sake of eating shit because everybody should have to. Like that's bullshit. I think there's bands that blow up overnight, and good for them, man. They clicked. They did something. They wrote a song, they made a record. If you could be 20 years old and write your first record and it just resonates with people and you blow up overnight, good for you. So I don't, I always think it's bullshit to say that bands should have to pay dues. If it clicks, then it clicks. Good for you. Um, but if it doesn't click, then you go on Warp Tour and you just, and like you said, you become a better band. You learn to, as a singer, you learn to sing. I might be singing at 10:30 a.m. tomorrow. I might be singing at 7 p.m. tomorrow. I don't know, but I'm gonna do it. It may be dusty out when I sing. Like if you go, like, what if you get huge and you go or playing a big main stage slot, a download or something like that, and it's dusty and it's hot and it's whatever. It's like, yeah, I've done that hundreds of times. That's nothing to me. You know what I mean? Like I do that I used to do that all the time.
Yeah.
What if you get a slot at Reading and it's an opening slot and you're playing at 10 a.m.? It's like, yeah, sure. I've done that. I could do that. So it really just teaches you a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of problem solving. You're in the middle of a field and the batteries on your pedal died and you are, 20 or 30 miles with no vehicle to the closest Walmart. Like what are you gonna do? You're gonna figure it out.
Yeah, it's becoming adaptable. I think that's very, very key in any kind of touring band, and that's why it was
Yeah,
so
it's
vital
not
right there.
yeah, it's not eating shit for the sake of eating shit. It's like
Mm.
eating shit and figuring out your way through it.
Yeah, problem solving. Very, very
Yeah, it
important
prepares
for
you for anything.
anyone on the road.
Not
Yeah,
just as a
100%.
band, like as a person. Like
Mm.
like just in life, you know what I mean? Like so something goes sideways in the house, it's like, man, I used to fix flat tires with duct tape, like I could figure this out.
Yeah, if you can fix a tire with duct tape, you can fix a sink or a toilet or something. You're fine.
Yeah,
It's
I've
all
had yeah,
good.
I've had the axle on the trailer break in the middle of Arkansas, and you know what I mean? Like I could get through this.
Nice, nice. It's prepping you for DIY at home. I like that.
Yeah, one time, I
The
mean, we
unsung
ran out of
benefits.
money. We ran out of money and gas in South Carolina on our third tour ever. And we went and got jobs like on the docks fumigating tanks for a couple of days, like to make gas, to go make enough gas money to get home. Like I could figure out anything now.
Man, that's crazy. But yeah, so yeah, make yourself adaptable. Why not? You would definitely prepare yourself for anything. Before I let you go, man, I'll obviously ask what's next. I mean, obviously the record came out just last year. You're in the middle of this touring cycle, but how far ahead do you guys kind of think about new music stuff? Are you a band that writes on the road? Are you always thinking about that? Or are you happy to just kind of do the tour, live in that era for a second?
I'm writing all the time. It takes me a long time. I'm not like a very prolific writer. It takes me a long time to write songs. So I'm writing all the time. I'm coming up with ideas. I self-edit a ton, so I throw away much more than ever gets heard by anybody. Um, so I'm always writing, and then when we say it's time to make a record, then I've got sort of this stockpile of ideas that I'm ready to like bring to the table.